said that when you were 10 years old, you felt like you were 100. Why did you feel so old as a kid?
Well, I think because of the circumstances of growing up in an immigrant atmosphere, very, very Greek, hanging on to the Greek traditions, because that's all they had to hang on to. And the Greeks, especially the Cretans from the island of Crete, tend to live a whole lifetime of emotions into each day. I mean, each day you've had your tragedy, you've had your big comic relief. I mean, you have gone the whole gamut of emotions in one day, and we did this all the time. It was a way of life.
Fetishist, but I think hands are so fundamental for expressing. You can read the person's mind through watching his hands. So, clinging on his hand, which is an anchor of safety and comfort and warmth and strength, is life. Then, with a broken wrist, come down like this. Then, with the musical accent, up a bit. Then the other one follows. The other one could be the other way around, like this. Like in a prayer. Like this. Then you catch up both
Possibly
of them.
there's a heredity there, you know. I don't believe that this voice came just suddenly from nothing. Has to be something. Especially today we recognize that the heredity is the most important factor. The people, they say that there is, when somebody dies, it's supposed to go to another child that is born as the theories they have is not that. Is the chromosomes that they are in the child, you know, from previous generations. And they can appear in 3, 4, or 5 generations. It's not necessary to be exactly the descendant of the previous generation. We know that. Is atavistic, as we call. Now, when I say it's a chromosome, when it was that, I can't see exactly. But I believe that this is something that explains the appearance of artists among people that they are not artists at all, you know, because if really the father or the mother is an artist, it's possible to say that's an education they give aired enough to the child, but it's a gifted. The voice is a gift. It's not, you can train the voice, you can make what you like with the voice if you have the gift.
Dr. Polymenakos, as the family physician, you would know, where did it begin?
The mother was very dominant, and she had for Teresa the feeling that she would become a great artist, you know. And she told me one day, I remember well, that when she accomplishes her studies, one day she will be in the Metropolitan Opera. It was predicting that, the mother.
first time you saw the Metropolitan Opera, I think it was in Toronto. How did that happen?
We somehow came upon 2 tickets to the opera. And my brother took me. It was my 16th birthday. And it was at, what's the
Maple
big
Leaf
forum?
Gardens.
Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. We sat somewhere way up in the rafters. And I didn't want to go. I didn't know anything about opera except that it was in a foreign language and rich people went to it and I wouldn't understand a thing and I was going to hate it. And that night really, I suppose, changed the course of my life.
What did you feel when you saw saw
I was overwhelmed. I mean, there was this wonderful story, and sad story, but wonderful, and the sets and the costumes and a whole world and 100 musicians in the pit. I mean, I didn't know it was 100, so it looked like hundreds to me, playing this fabulous music. And the most incredible, extraordinary part of all were these people opening their mouths, making incredible sounds coming out of the human body. I mean, I thought that's what I want to do.
Had you at that time had musical training, any professional musical training?
I tell you, when I was 2 years old, my sister tells me that my mother and father had somehow scraped together $75, which was a lot of money in those days, and to buy a piano. And the reason they bought the piano was that my sister had been crying and crying that she wanted to be a dancer and wanted dancing lessons. Now, Mary at that time, if I was 2, she's 5 years older, she was 7. We were living on Dundas Street. And she had one dancing lesson. And because we lived up at the top of the flight of stairs, there were people, obviously there must have been doors to the side, that lived downstairs. She had one lesson, and that was all, because we would have been thrown out of our flat. So to compensate, my poor sister never became the dancer she wanted to become, but to compensate, my mother and father bought this piano. And as my sister tells me, much to her frustration, a piano teacher used to come to the house and teach her the piano, and she'd spend all week trying to learn that tune. She'd spend all week. And as soon as that teacher would leave, having showed her the new song, and I was 2 years old, I mean, I don't remember this, my sister tells me this, would walk over to the piano and play whatever it was, and she'd feel like murdering me, of course. So this would happen after each piano lesson. I had, obviously, from very young, an ear for picking tunes out of it.
But a piano was an incredible investment
Yes.
for a family that was having trouble.
Absolutely. We were a family of extremes.
But the people...
you know, it was a terrible way of living, and it was a wonderful way of living. I mean, I have the most incredible happy memories, euphoric memories. On the other hand, I have memories that are, I can't talk about them. They're so horrific.
Is it true that you really wore sackcloth or that's a flour sack as underwear?
Well, my mother used to make, I think, you know, it was a time of being frugal. And my mother used to make bed linen out of the flour sacks, pillowcases. We used to wear little inside shirts. I had a little inside shirt that said Primrose Flower across my chest. I used to hate taking my clothes off for gym, as you can imagine, because I had this shirt that said, made out of what? I mean, today it would be very fashionable, of course. My mother was